who at times was the plant propagator at the original Cartwright's Nursery and Play Service as a sideline in 1958 and grew that company into one of Memphis's first commercial lawn and shrub care companies. Indiana State University, LSU, in landscape architect and started the landscape division of the family business in 1984 along with his brother Lynn Lawhon. For over 30 years, John has designed many landscapes around the Mid-South, going as far south as Oxford, east to Nashville, and north to Steele, Missouri. John enjoys the design process and helping clients in the creation of their own private urban oasis. He has designed and installed landscape for patio homes, master plans for very large estates, and extensive lists of commercial properties. During his long-time relationship with the town of Collierville, he designed the landscaping around the town square and park. He is a longtime Boy Scout volunteer leader, member of the Collierville Methodist Church, and current commissioner on the Design Review Board for the town of Collierville. Something that John has not written. He also does tours to Shiloh. He's a Civil War buff, and also, I hope I'm not getting him into anything, but you do charitable design work as well.
Right.
I know that that's.
We try to do something at least once a year of that nature.
You need to brag about that. John's passion for plants keeps him looking for new plants that will work in the Mid-South. Let's welcome John and Jennifer Lawhon.
Yeah.
Thank you, Lynn and Joe. Appreciate that. I had, like they said, that also we actually go a little farther now. Forgot to add that. We went to Tuscaloosa this year. My first cousin insisted they had a plan since he kind of watched over my daughter when she was at the University of Alabama. So I did a plan for him and he insisted I come down and install it. So that was the farthest I think we've been, because that's about 3.5 hour drive down there. But we do try to, we're all word of mouth pretty much. That's pretty much all we've ever done. We stayed plenty busy that way, strangely enough. I've done all kinds of projects, and sometimes I never know where things are going to come from. It's referral. We've done multiple projects for people over both in phased and multiple houses for individuals. We had one recently, 15 years later, after we did the original landscape, they actually came and asked us to do some more work for them. So that's a testament. If you do good work and you're honest, I think that's the main thing. That's our philosophy. We've always tried to do the work that I would do for myself. And I think if you have that attitude and you're real picky about what you do, you'll have success at it. But no, what we're going to talk today basically is planning for the fall and preparing for the winter. I've got a little handout I've given everybody that kind of synopsis of what we're doing. These are just simple things that you can do yourself at your own home in order to prepare for the winter months. There's also some suggestions, some things you may not be able to do, but these are things that will get your yard and your landscape prepared for the coming year. The first and foremost is mulch. Mulch in the fall to protect roots and trees and shrubs during the winter. And it also stops weeds from coming up later or earlier in the spring. If you mulch now, you'll have no real problem with your weeds in your flower beds, which is a big problem for a lot of people because they don't mulch until late in spring. By that time, if the weeds are already up, they'll come through the mulch. So this is the time when you actually should do your mulching right now. And we always recommend 2 to 3 inches, by the way, of mulch on there. You just make sure that you don't put mulch in the crown of the plant. And what the crown is at the base of the, where the soil is right here. You don't put mulch up in here in the branches because that will cause rot. All right, I see a lot of problems with that. Also, another common, even with professionals that they mulch, they pile mulch way up on top, like what we call volume mulching. And what that is that keeps the trunk wet, and that is a vector for diseases and rot. So you pull it back off, you just want it around the plant and not piled up in the crown or on top of the plant. The second thing I recommend is trimming of unruly plants. When I say trimming, I don't mean any radical pruning. There's a difference. Radical pruning is cutting things back hard, maybe even like with hollies, or certain things you can cut back all the way, like hollies, real forgiving. You can cut them back to the stems and it'll still come out. Certain things like arborvitae, junipers, things like that. If you cut all the foliage back, you've killed it. I recently saw a project where I actually been on this job and didn't get it. It was a part of Methodist Hospital down the road down here. The landscape company they hired, they had junipers in the front. They cut them, all the foliage off, every single one of them died. So, you know, in this business, the landscape business is a big tent, what I call a big tent business. There are people that, you know, they push the lawnmower, suddenly they're qualified to do your landscape. Other people have education in it, a lot of experience. There's a huge difference, but it's a big tent business. You definitely get what you pay for when you hire somebody. If you hire somebody cheap, that's what you're gonna get. Either they're gonna bid it too low and they'll be out of business next year and won't, their warranty is no good, or they'll overcharge you for what you're getting. Sounds like a good deal, but if you don't get what you pay for, then that's just the way it is. So, just light pruning, not any heavy pruning. Save the radical pruning for like latter February. That's when you can cut things back really hard. If you've got a big holly that's hiding your windows or obstructing your cars, and you need to radically cut it back, do that in the latter part of the winter, right before spring green up. The next thing is fall, I say, is a great time to transplant shrubs, trees, and perennials. There's little chance of shock during the fall. In other words, plants shock when they're moved from one environment to another. Oftentimes, if you have to dig something up, you've cut roots. That roots don't have enough time to heal and regenerate. So, but if you do it in the fall, they won't shock. It's much like putting somebody to sleep with anesthesia. You know, if you weren't asleep when they did surgery on you, you're going to be in trouble. So fall and winter is a great time to do any kind of transplanting or that kind of thing. Another thing is for your turf, if you have a big area in your yard and you have a big bare space in there, if it's really dark, no cultivated grass, even shade tolerant grasses like Georgia, will not survive in the darkest location. So, the cheapest and most efficient way to get some sort of grass in there is to rough up the ground and put down fescue seed. Fescue is a cool season grass, meaning it really grows in the winter. It'll be green in the winter and gets kind of not so green in the summertime, but it can still live. But the fescue is much more shade tolerant than the Georgia, and it's very cheap. But you have to what we call scarify the soil or rough it up with a rake or a small tiller or something, or spike it. We have an aerator we usually put on there, and then put the seed down and then get them watered. The fescue seed has got to germinate before we have hard freezes. It can be frozen, go below freezing at night, but it can't stay there during the day because you have to get the roots established before we get into the winter months. But once we're in the winter months, it'll survive all winter if you get it established. There's a small window, October into November, that you can do the fescue. Yes.
I got a quick question. We do have that heavily shaded back lawn, and
Right.
Troy replants fescue every year. I mean, that's just the nature of the beast, is it not? There's
Well,
nothing
it
permanent.
is. There's two things people make a mistake is. Number one, the fescue has to be cut higher than you'd cut Bermuda. You cannot cut it the same. A lot of these lawn guys come in there and they cut the same regardless. They'll run over it and all. The other thing is, it's not so drought tolerant. You're on a sloping hill, you need to keep a little more water on it in the worst part of the months because that degenerates it. Probably every year to every 2 years. I say if you do it right, you ought to be able to hang in there 2 years. you know, but it is an issue here because and what the issue is up north, that's a common grass. They use it all the time up north. Wood grass, bent grass, fescue, or the turf grass. They don't have any Bermuda grass. It's a hot season grass. So, people that put that down up there don't have the issues because it's not the hot days, because Wisconsin can get hot, you know, but it's the nights that are the problem here. And what they do is this grass keeps growing all night. It doesn't rest. It metabolizes the sugar. So it basically grows itself to death in the heat of the summer here. And that's why they have a problem. It's not the day heat, it's night heat. And it's also is a problem. But we're a transitional zone. You can't have, you go much farther south and you forget it. It won't grow at all. But it does become a problem from that standpoint, you're right. It's the only thing that'll tolerate full shade to that aspect. And don't fool yourself. These guys come in there and try to sell you Palisade Georgia. They're saying it's shade proof. It's not. It's not at all. It's a hair more shade tolerant. And it's also more susceptible to fungus. I'm not a real fan of Palisade. But I have customers that demand it. But you do have to watch the fungus more than that. But anyway, that's for grass. Also, you want to fertilize your yard with a well-balanced fertilizer in the fall. And what that does is you're improving the root strength to get roots down in there that will live through the winter. You're not really trying to get a lot of growth in there. You're just trying your system to be stronger. Yes?
So would you lay the fescue and then lay the fertilizer?
No, what we typically do is we put some fertilizer down. You know, we rough it up, throw a little fertilizer in, and then put the fescue on top. You know, and that we do that with all our sod. If we're doing sod, we'll till it up really thoroughly, apply the fertilizer in there, and then lay the sod down there. And that's the best way to do it. And you don't have to have a lot of fertilizer with fescue. You can actually, it's pretty tough, and you can actually just do it not put any fertilizer down. It'll do fine for the most part.
Another thing that we do is we'll put the seed down, and then 2 weeks later, we come back and check it. We might have to put some more seed down if it didn't germinate. Oh, sorry.
The fescue is a relatively cheap option. You know, you can put fescue seed down for, you know, a couple $100, whereas a couple thousand for the same thing in a sod. I won't recommend, I had a really good customer, he's a really good customer, we've done work for him here. He insisted we do fescue sod because he's having a problem, and I kept telling him, I said, Doc, I said, this is not a good idea, because this stuff, you can have the same results with the seed, but it's a fraction of the cost, and you're still gonna lose it. You know, I need it for the part, I need it to do right now. Sure enough, put it in there, he overwatered it, he had the thing going every day, it's got fungus and died. Of course, he made it to the party. And then he comes back and he fusses at me, and I said, I did exactly what I told you. It's a waste of money.
What time of year was that?
This was, well, we put it in, I think latter spring or something like that. And so don't waste your money on fescue sod. Georgia sod is one thing, not fescue.
Another thing, as far as when you do seed, you need to keep it wet for 2 weeks, solid, right?
Right, keep it wet initially in order to get it germinating quicker. All right, another thing is, which I brought examples up, you've got to do a good ground preparation, but now's a great time to do your fall flowers. And when we say fall flowers, we're talking about mainly pansies. These right here, they've got large flowers like that. These are in the pansy family. It's called a viola. And the other thing is like mums. Also, there are a lot of bulbs you can plant this time of year, like tulips, daffodils and narcissus, crocus, all these little bulbs that will come up in the spring, but they need the winter. They need to be planted now so they can establish their root system. And you can't come in there and put that bulb in the middle of spring and expect to have anything. It's got to be done now. You gotta follow the instructions, typically inches depth, for those bulbs. But it'll give you a lot of pleasure in the spring if you do it now. Yes?
I've got a question about tulips up north. If you plant a tulip, it's a lifetime relationship. You do not
It's
have to
not.
touch it again. But here, they rot, don't they?
Right, because we have soils that are heavy clay, and the heavy clay plus the humidity here, occasionally a few of them will come back, but it's not daffodils are different, they'll come back, daffodil, daylilies, things like that will come back, but tulips are not, you're gonna plant them just for the temporary show here.
There's no digging them up and saving the bulb. is there?
Well, you can, but it's really hard to do without having them rot. You know, some people try to do that, but it's hardly worth it, in my opinion, for what you get left over, because they'll rot up. I mean, you can try it. If you had something real expensive, I'd do it, but otherwise, I wouldn't. I just put some new ones in there and forget about it. But crocus and daffodils and those kind of things, Lycoris, there's a plant called spider lily, Lycoris. There's 2 or 3 varieties. There's the red one that's really kind of cool, the Lycoris radiata. It's a really pretty, and has a big spider-like, looks like almost like a spider-like bulb pops up. There's one that my grandmother had that has a real pink, big flower she used to call it Naked Lady, because the foliage comes up in August, or the foliage comes up in the spring, and you see those leaves, then it dies back, and around August, all of a sudden this thing pops up.
Are they the red flowers?
Well, this one's the pink, they're big and they're
They're
pink.
beautiful.
But they're all in the same fund. There's another one called, like, of course, aurea. Aurea means gold in Latin. It's a yellow color, and you can plant those. Those are really cool little old-timey bulbs that you can plant, and they'll keep coming up over and over again. Other things is chrysanthemums or mums. They will come back, but you have to pinch them back and cut them back. You gotta know what you're doing to do it. So most people just plant a chrysanthemum and then dig it up and throw it away. That's typically what they do. But if you had them at the back of the border and you're willing to pinch them back and keep them from getting leggy, then you can make them last, as an option. But the key, especially on these or any flowers that we do a lot of ground preparation. And that's adding organic matter and making sure our drainage is good. And then you've got, of course, supply enough water to it in order to keep them in. But doing good ground prep, we use a slow release fertilizer in there like Osmocote. It's really good, won't burn it. And we lightly mulch, not heavy mulch at all on these. We put a pre-emergent herbicide on it just to keep the weeds out, but if you're against that, you just hand weed it. See, so those are options for color, but you'll have success if you do good ground prep. If you put this in the plain clay, forget it. You're wasting your money. Don't even bother. You're just going to waste money. All right, after the leaves drop, I recommend that's the good time to trim your trees, because you don't have to fool with all the leaves getting all over everything. And it's bulky too. So what you want to do is remove any limbs that are touching the house. I went and met with a guy yesterday. He's got a big crepe myrtle. The limbs are all over the house. What they're going to do is, when we get into these storms in the winter, scrape all his roofing off. So we're going to trim that up. We never believe in bobbing these crepe myrtles off like sticks. That's bad practice. They're trees, and you should crown them out like this, 8 to 10 feet. Takes a little effort, takes a little looking. Always tell my men, stand back, cut a little bit, look at it, then go back and cut more. Don't just whack it off and look at it and go, oh man, I messed up. Because you cannot glue the limb back on. So you want to do things a little at a time, look at it from the whole as a shape, and just do it naturally. And also, any branches that cross like that, you need to cut one of them off, because they'll grow and rub into the other and cause a weak place. So when you have a storm, that's a place that's gonna break like that. Yes,
Your comment about tree limbs resting on the roof, that's a serious thing with insurance companies. And when a new homeowner policy is purchased, the house gets inspected, and that can be enough to say, if you don't fix that, we're not gonna insure your home. So keep it up, and you can tell them, blame the insurance company, say your insurance company will cancel your insurance if you don't take care of these.
right.
trees."
Well, large trees, we don't do large trees, I just don't have the insurance or wanna have the liability of people climbing trees, but, we'll do anything you can reach from the ground, but, the ones that, when we had our straight line event several years ago, you know, in the nineties, they called it Hurricane Elvis, where all the winds came out straight. Well, during that period, people that didn't thin their trees out, the proper way to do it is come in there and take the dead wood out in the canopy so that light can still come through, rather than top it off or anything like that. So they lightened the load, they took heavy branches that were like a fulcrum off, they trimmed it all and they didn't have damage. The ones that did, and you could drive around Galloway, I had a customer on Galloway, and their trees were fine because they had it trimmed the spring before. A guy right down the street, that big tree hit the house and smashed his Volvo. So they didn't do anything, so it caught it like a big wind sail and just took it flat over. Others, I had a customer I just met with recently in Midtown after they had and it literally practically took his house out, a large oak. I mean, right through the middle of it. He said there were 2 or 3 groups wouldn't even worry about fixing it, demolish the house. He found one guy that could fix it. And the insurance was agreeable, so he was able to repair it, but it's significant damage. Because, and if he'd had it inspected and had the tree company come, they could have found out it was hollow. And they could have taken it out earlier. So, I always recommend, you really, if you do your work and keep your trees up, and you'll have less problems. No, that's always a problem. And I'll tell people, sometimes I'll come on a job site and I do an overall assessment and I'll look and I'll go, you know, you've really gotta remove those trees. We had a commercial client that they did the same thing. And I convinced them to take all their trees out they had on there because all the limbs were falling. Those trees, 4 of them were half dead, and all these cars are parking right under them. So, probably saved them several $1,000s. But they're too cheap. They cut me loose the next year. You know, I probably saved them a huge lawsuit. You get what you pay for.
Theater
what it
Memphis
is.
said 7 leaves fall on cars. Earlier this spring, so they need your service.
Yes, they did. We did a little free job for them. We did their sign free, as a donation. But anyway, that's about the trees. Let me think. All right, another thing, late in the fall, you want to at least every other year, if you don't do it every year, is have your yard aerated. You can rent one of these machines. It punches holes, it's got like a wheel on it, and punches holes in the ground, and what that does is, it brings, your soil gets by lawnmowers going over it, people walking on it, and when it gets compacted, the roots of this grass, grass has thousands of plants, individual plants with their own root system. Well, the roots get compacted and the grass starts to die. And so by pulling these holes in through there, you're bringing air back to the roots, loosening the soil, and allowing these plants to breathe. So aeration is a good thing to do. You can do it yourself or hire it done, either way, but it's a good thing to do sometime in the late fall, winter. Another thing is we suggest you put an agricultural lime on the soil at least once a year. Used to be, when my dad started out, he would buy the stuff in bulk. We would load it with a tractor on a truck and then spread it by hand out there. It was a really heavy grade, true agricultural lime. Now, most companies do pelletized lime. And what the lime does is our pH, or soil acidity, is real acid here in the Mid-South. And you're trying to change that pH so that it's a it's a real acid, so you want to get it closer to the neutral area if possible. That keeps the soil from being too acid and makes the plant be able to grow better. So that's why you put the lime on there. But it needs to be done at least otherwise your yard will slowly deteriorate when you won't have any grass over time. Then another suggestion is, and this is a hard sell to people because they just don't want to spend the money. Some people, if they can't see a problem, then it's not a problem until it is a problem. And many a time I've gone out on a yard in the spring and go, why is my yard dead now? It's big patches in there. Why is it dead? Well, it's because you have fungus, and the fungus started in the fall. So if you had put a fall application of fungicide on the grass, then you would have avoided the problem in the spring because it rained all winter and the fungus pathogen gets down into the soil and starts affecting the root system and the stem. So by the time it greens up, it doesn't green up. But it's a hard sell to a lot of people to get them to do preventative treatments. They just think they're throwing money away. But you can't, once grass has it, you can stop the fungus, but it's a devil getting the grass to regenerate. It's not like, it's like you had an infection of your skin and your skin rotted off. Well, it's not gonna easily regenerate that spot. So that's what I often recommend, that they do a preventative application, especially in the wet winter. Fall's also a good time to treat your yard with a pre-emergent to prevent weeds coming up and onions coming up. Later in the winter, another pre-emergent app should be applied to prevent spring weeds from coming in. That's just a preventative, and that keeps you from having to come out there and having to put a lot of spray on that in order to get rid of it. It's much harder the other way. It's also recommended that trees, especially trees under stress, would benefit from deep liquid root feeding. You can also, if you're going to try to do this yourself, you can buy these tree spikes and you put them out along the drip line, and you just look out the edge of where that tree limbs are, and that's drip line. Your root system in your trees go all the way out to and past where you see the limbs are. And that tree is feeding from that area. So if you put these spikes out there, they're slow release and they'll gradually feed the food. When we do it, we use an injector and we put it down in there and it immediately throws that fertilizer down into the root zone. So when it comes out in the spring, and that really, really works. It really, especially if your tree's under stress. Really pays off, really good service. It really, like I say, a lot of people don't, and then their trees slowly deteriorate, it slowly die, and then it's too late. The last thing I always want to say is try to enjoy the fall. I always have a harder time. I love nature, I love plants, it's so much fun to me, but spring is so stressful to me because not only do we have lots of work starting up, I stress about all the, it's freeze. Things start to blossom out when we have a late freeze and everything's going to be injured. So try to enjoy the beauty in the fall and the beauty in the spring, and you all have a blessed day.
Thank you. Any questions you guys want to ask me?
I was asking your wife, these little flowers were growing in the backyard of some rental property, and I have tried to find what they're called.
Oh,
And I mean, I found some that are similar, but they're not that exact flower.
yes.
Did you see?
I'm ready to see it.
It's on,
I'll show you. I'll show you.
That is,
I cannot find that exact flower.
I know what it is. My grandmother had it.
It was growing in the back of a house that was built in the 1950s.
Yes. My
And it's in their
grandmother had those.
backyard.
And the winner is?
I know.
I'll think, Leanne, I'll think of it.
I wanted to.
Time's up.
It's the prettiest little flower.
All right, Beverly, come down real quick and give us a few